We begin now with developing news out of the capital city.
Raw emotion at the scene of a homicide investigation. 3 people found dead last night inside of a city apartment.
Pinpoint News Tracker shows you where it happened on General Street, which is right near Admiral Street and the North Providence line.
Eyewitness News reporter Andrew Adamson has the latest this morning, live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
That's right, Danielle and Patrick. We're still learning more about this homicide investigation in downtown Providence. I was just in the Providence Police Department talking to an officer who confirmed to me that 3 people were shot to death late last night in an apartment on General Street. You can see here just an emotional scene that Eyewitness News cameras captured late last night. Police are searching for more clues to find out just how these people died. They were originally called in on a shooting around 10:30 p.m. Monday. We have confirmed that the victims include a 22-year-old woman, a 23-year-old man, and police believe another man who is in his 30s. We're still trying to discover the identities of the victims, and at this point, no word on any suspects or arrests in this case. And as I said, a homicide investigation is underway at this point. Of course, when we do learn any more additional details about this case, we'll be sure to pass them along to you. For now, live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Andrew Adamson, Eyewitness News.
Tonight with in-depth coverage of this tragic triple homicide. It's a story we've been on top of since it first broke late last night, and now we're learning more about the 3 people killed. 2 men and 1 woman, all in their early 20s, were shot to death at the Maplewood Terrace Apartments on General Street near the North Providence line. Police tell us 3 children were also in the apartment at the time, but were not physically harmed. Now, as investigators piece together what happened, loved ones are left wondering why. Eyewitness News reporter Walt Buteau is standing by with the mayor's response to his city's latest case of deadly violence. But we begin tonight with Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly live at Providence Police Headquarters.
Susan, the police are looking for whoever is responsible for a triple homicide here in Providence around 10:30 last night.
That's my sister.
At the Maplewood Terrace housing complex in the north end of Providence, relatives and friends of the victims are mourning the loss of their loved ones.
She was a good girl.
The police say 3 people, 2 men and a woman, were shot and killed inside a first-floor apartment at 151 General Street. The man and the woman lived here. 23-year-old Michael Martin and his girlfriend, 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros. A friend, 22-year-old Damien, was visiting.
This is crazy. My sister did not deserve this. She did not deserve it.
Talisha Latorno tells us Shemeeka Barros was her sister and that she had 2 young daughters and a young brother. The police say all 3 children were in the apartment at the time of the shooting.
My nephew was only 22, you know? Like, he just started living, you know? He ain't even a grown man yet, and dead already, you know?
She was a good person. My nieces have no mom now.
The police aren't talking yet about what may have motivated the shooting or about possible suspects. Coming up new at 6, gratitude that the children were in another room. Live at police headquarters with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
First, a tragic triple homicide. 3 people shot and killed inside a Providence home. Tonight, family, friends, and the community are mourning the loss as police continue their investigation. 2 men and 1 woman killed with 3 children inside the apartment. The Pinpoint News Tracker takes you to the scene, the Maplewood Terrace Apartments on General Street. We have in-depth coverage tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Walt Buteau is standing by with reaction from neighbors. First, let's go right to Sean Daly live outside Providence Police Headquarters.
Thankfully, triple homicides are rare in Rhode Island, but they do happen, and when they do, they produce feelings that are painful and raw. Emotions were running high last night at the Maplewood Terrace housing complex in the north end of Providence. The police say 3 people were shot and killed in a first-floor apartment. One of the 3 was Talisha Latorno's sister.
I got a call that she got shot, and I just came running. There was tapes, cops flooded everywhere. They wouldn't even let me in the house to see her.
The police identified the 3 shooting victims as 23-year-old Michael Martin and his girlfriend, 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, both of whom lived here. The 3rd victim, 22-year-old Damien was visiting. One of the 3 victims, Shemeeka Barros, had 2 daughters and a younger brother. The police say all 3 children were in the apartment at the time of the shooting.
But I know they didn't see it. I know for a fact they didn't see it.
Talisha Letourneau is grateful the children were in another room.
They heard the gunshots, but they didn't see nobody. They didn't see nothing.
Does that help in your mind that they did not witness the shooting?
Yes, to me, because they're too young for that. They don't need to see that.
A sister of a shooting victim counting her blessings wherever she can find them as the police keep looking for whoever did this. Live at police headquarters with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
Honestly, she was like the jolliest person over here. Wow. All you seen from a distance was her teeth. She was a jolly person.
Yeah.
Imagine how they're going to feel when they get 18, 16. Growing up without a mom, that's tough. Yeah. I'm 18. My mom has to wait 3 days before my 18th birthday. Oh my God. Life's too crazy. Yeah. Sure, too crazy.
Well, last night's killings are just the latest tragedies in what's been a violent summer so far in the city of Providence. Today, we caught up with Mayor Angel Taveras, who says he won't rest until the streets are safe. Our in-depth coverage continues now, live from Providence with Eyewitness News reporter Walt Buteau.
Detectives are back at the scene here as we take you across Admiral Street. They are on the porch where this all happened last night. You can see the detectives in the foreground, balloons, flowers, and candles to the left there for the victim. Today, the mayor told us what he hopes will happen next. While investigators track down the trail that brought gunfire to this doorstep, Mayor Taveras talked about the crime's human impact on his city and the victims' loved ones.
This is obviously a tragedy. 3 people gone.
The first-term mayor was briefed last night and again this morning.
And we're focused on making sure that the people responsible are brought to justice, that they're never in a position to do this to anyone else ever again.
He added another ideal, insisting this crime that killed 3 does not mean the capital is unsafe.
And let's see how calm you are.
Providence is safe, but any violence is too much violence. We were working very, very hard before this. We'll continue to work hard after this as well, because any violence is too much violence in any city. So we need to make sure that we live in a city that's totally free of violence. And until we do that, we can never stop working.
And right now the work for these detectives is, of course, to find the clues that will lead them to the killer or the killers in this case. Tonight at 6, we talk with neighbors of the victims about what they think should happen next. Live at the Mobile Newsroom in Providence, Walt Buteau, Eyewitness News.
We have in-depth coverage of this tragic triple homicide tonight. Last night's attack has a community on edge. It has been a violent summer in the capital city, and neighbors are calling for an end to it. Eyewitness News reporter Walt Buteau joins us now live on the scene.
Well, sadly, neighbors in this area say they've seen this type of violence before in this part of the city or in other parts of the city, but this is different. Much worse, they say, because there are 3 victims this time. There were children in the house, and the gunfire fired from the front porch, where right now candles are glowing. The man who lives next door offered a plea that he admits probably won't happen. Richard Ambers wants the killer or killers to turn themselves into police.
These kids are without their mother. They need closure. The family needs closure. And so many people are struck by this. So many people are hurt by this. You know, and it's sad because it happens every day, but she's too young to have gone so soon.
It's crazy.
Jose Hernandez knows one of the men who was shot to death, and he's convinced he did not have any enemies that would kill him.
Had 2 jobs, he worked, did what he had to do, you know, he was a good kid, never had no problems, never got arrested or nothing.
After a night where the frustration and anger boiled over in front of the victim's front door.
These are the nephews, and they're with a bullet behind their head. And let's see how calm you are.
There are no motives that make sense to the friends of the victims.
Regardless of if it was drug-related, hatred, or if there was animosity with anyone.
Right now you can see a woman just walking away from that front porch where those candles are and the balloons are as well. Police are of course looking for clues by themselves, but they're also asking for help from anyone who saw anything that might help them find the killers. Live at the Providence Mobile Newsroom in Providence, Walt Buteau, Eyewitness News.
Tonight with the latest developments in a triple homicide investigation in Providence. Tonight, police are reaching out to the public for help solving the deadly shooting of 3 young adults inside a Providence apartment. 23-year-old Michael Martin, 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, and 22-year-old Damien were found dead Monday night. Police say 3 children were inside the home when they were shot. Now the community is joining loved ones in praying for the victims and justice. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us live now from Providence with the Mobile Newsroom.
48 hours since 3 people were shot and killed here in Providence, and still emotions are running high.
Have your way in Providence, oh Father God. Have your way. Stop this violence, people. Stop the violence. Stop the violence.
Churchgoers praying for peace outside the scene of Monday's triple homicide in the north end of Providence, as relatives and friends of the victims pray for justice.
I just hope whoever did it is brought to justice. That's my sister. She didn't deserve to die like that. She had 2 beautiful daughters. 2 beautiful daughters.
A makeshift shrine to the 3 victims is growing.
I have actual brothers and sisters, but he was the only one I called like my brother. Blood couldn't have made us any closer. Like, I'm just thinking a lot. It's just, I have a lot of memories.
Thankfully, triple homicides are rare in Rhode Island, which explains why the crime scene on General Street is now a destination. Tell me why you drove by this scene here today, right now.
Just to show the support. I mean, Rhode Island is a tight, small, tight community, and it just shows the support that, you know, we all bond for one another in time of sorrow. You don't have to know the person, but it does hit you. We're a tight family, Rhode Island.
Bring whoever did it. Bring them, lock them up. Lock them up.
Coming up new at 6, that woman who's a sister of one of the 3 victims tells us what she says the police told her the night of the shooting and why she believes it could lead to witnesses and possibly to 1 or more arrests. Live at police headquarters with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
Now we're working the very latest on that tragic triple homicide in the capital city. Police were reportedly dispatched to Phoebe and Admiral Streets, about a block away from that homicide scene, for reports of shots fired last night. That's according to our news partners at the Providence Journal. Meanwhile, today, a makeshift memorial is still standing outside of the General Street crime scene. A friend of one of the victims, Damien, provided us this picture. He was found shot to death Monday along with 2 other victims, Michael Martin and Shemeeka Barros. Investigators say it does appear the victims were targeted.
First, we're working the latest developments on a tragic triple homicide in Providence. Police are still searching for suspects tonight as the victims' friends and families struggle to come to terms with their loss. 23-year-old Michael Martin, 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, and Damien were killed Monday night inside their General Street apartment. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now with more live outside headquarters.
Susan, a sister of one of the 3 victims of Monday night's triple homicide here in Providence, is reaching out to neighbors tonight with the hope that they may be able to help the police solve this horrific crime. Nearly 48 hours after 3 people were shot and killed on General Street in the north end of Providence, emotions are still running high.
It's terrible. All 3 of my friends gone at once.
This city's going, I don't know where it's going, but this shouldn't have happened.
Learn how to get along and love one another as God so loved us.
As churchgoers prayed outside the murder scene, the sister of one of the 3 victims reached out to possible witnesses.
That house that my sister got shot in, them 3 people, because it's a 4 house, them 3 people, they gotta know something. They know something. They either seen something, they know they have to know something.
Talisha Letourneau wants anyone who knows anything to help the police, please.
There was cops saying, oh yeah, there was like 11 shots. I'm like, 11 shots, no one heard nothing? At least no one peeked out the window to see who ran out the house. They couldn't describe them at least. 11 shots, come on.
A sister of one of the 3 victims doing whatever she can to help the police solve this crime.
Working the latest now on a tragic triple homicide in Providence. A makeshift memorial now stands at the Maplewood Terrace Apartments, where police say 2 men and a woman were shot to death with 3 children nearby. This morning, we're hearing from the city councilor who represents the neighborhood. Eyewitness News reporter Susan Campbell has the latest now with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Police still aren't saying whether they have any suspects in this case, and they're also not commenting on possible motives. But we are hearing new reaction from a local leader about the violence in his ward. Oh my God! Tense moments on Providence's north side as people rushed to the scene of a triple homicide. 2 men and 1 woman were shot to death late Monday night in an apartment at the Maplewood Terrace housing complex on General Street. Police have identified the victims as Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros, and Damien Cologne.
This is crazy. My sister did not deserve this. She did not deserve this.
3 children were also in the apartment at the time of the shooting. They were not injured, and family members tell Eyewitness News they didn't see the gunfire. Now, while friends and family gather at the scene to remember their loved ones whose lives were cut short, Councilman David Salvatore is reacting to the deadly gun violence in his ward.
I don't think it's a reflection of the neighborhood. These are isolated incidents, and whether they happen here or in a different neighborhood, these folks are targets. And any time there are children involved like this incident, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for our neighbors, and I'm concerned for our city.
And Councilman Salvatore has a message for people who knew the victims.
I am urging folks not to retaliate in any manner. That's just going to perpetuate more violence throughout the city and the neighborhood, and that's something that we don't need at this point.
Councilman Salvatore is also asking anyone with any information to call police so the person or people responsible can be brought to justice. Reporting in Providence with the Mobile Newsroom, Susan Campbell, Eyewitness News.
Funeral services are now set for one of the victims in Monday's triple homicide. Visiting hours for Damien Cologne will be held tomorrow from 4 until 7 at the Boyle and Son Funeral Home in Providence. Cologne's funeral mass is Saturday at 9 o'clock at St. Patrick's Church in Providence. Arrangements for the other victims have not yet been announced.
Damien Louis Cologne, age 22, of Winona Street, passed away on July 30th, 2012. Born on August 7th, 1989, he was the loving son of Jorge and Elizabeth Plant Cologne. Mr. Cologne was employed with Aspen Environmental as well as Stop and Shop. Damien was a loving and caring person who would help anyone in need. He will be missed by many friends and family. Besides his parents, he leaves his grandparents Thursa Plant, Margarita Valentin and Julio Perez. He was the brother of Samuel, Nathan and James Cologne. He also leaves many aunts, uncles and cousins. A massive Christian burial will be celebrated on Saturday at 9 a.m. in St. Patrick Church, Smith Street, Providence. Interment will follow in St. Anne's Cemetery. Visitation will be held on Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. in the Russell J. Boyle and Son Funeral Home, 331 Smith Street, Providence.
We begin tonight with the latest developments in the wake of a tragic triple homicide. As police continue searching for clues in Monday night's deadly shootings in Providence, loved ones are beginning to say goodbye to the victims. Today, a funeral service was held for the 22-year-old woman who was found gunned down inside a Providence apartment alongside 2 young men. This as the city begins to bring the killers to justice. Eyewitness News reporter Neka Nuoso joins us live now with the latest developments from the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Susan, the funeral for Shemeeka Barros happened earlier today. She is the first of the triple homicide victims laid to rest. Guests greet each other with hugs, gathered in front of this Providence funeral home to say goodbye to 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros. The mother of two, we're told, was studying to become a nurse. But those dreams were cut short Monday when Barros was shot and killed here on General Street. Also killed 22-year-old Damien and 23-year-old Michael Martin.
Detectives are working diligently the past several nights since the incident, and as soon as we have something to report, we will, and we're hopeful.
The triple shooting deaths bring the total number of homicides in Providence to 12 this year. Thursday, the capital city announced a new initiative, increasing community street workers from 4 to 10, expanding Project Night Vision, a recreational program for young people, an outreach program making sure every neighborhood has a crime watch is already underway, and promotion of the city's illegal gun tip line. But most important, they say, is community involvement.
There's not going to be one simple solution to this problem. We need to address this on a variety of fronts, and that's what I've tried to do. And that's what we are trying to do collectively.
Mayor Angel Tavares says he has reached out to each of the families of those homicide victims. We'll have that story new at 6. Live at the Providence Mobile Newsroom, I'm Neka Nwosu, Eyewitness News.
Shemeeka Paulette Barros, 22, of Rugby Street, died Monday, July 30th in Providence. Born in Providence, she was the daughter of Michael Perry and Jamela Ali Barros of Providence. She was a lifelong resident of the city. Shemeeka was a graduate of the Met School and was currently enrolled at Sanford Brown studying nursing. She was an artist, poet, singer, and loving mother of 2 children.
The second of 3 victims in Providence's tragic triple homicide has been laid to rest. Funeral services were held today for 22-year-old Damien Cologne. He was gunned down inside this Providence apartment, along with 42-year-old Shemeeka Barros and 23-year-old Michael Martin. Martin will be laid to rest on Monday. In the meantime, city officials are vowing to bring their killers to justice.
Now we want to bring you the latest developments on last week's triple homicide in Providence. The last of the 3 victims is going to be laid to rest later today. 23-year-old Michael Martin was gunned down inside of this Providence apartment along with 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros and 22-year-old Damien Cologne. No arrests have been made, but police are calling on anyone who may have witnessed anything to come forward.
Providence, RI. Friends and family are remembering a man who was killed in Providence in the city's latest murder. The funeral service for 23-year-old Michael Martin was today in Cranston. Martin, along with 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros and 22-year-old Damien Cologne, were shot to death last week at an apartment on General Street.
At 11 tonight, a suspect is under arrest for a tragic triple homicide in Providence. That suspect, whom we're told is a teenager, is due in court tomorrow.
The arrest was breaking news on Eyewitness News Live at 5, and tonight we have reaction from the families of the victims. Eyewitness News reporter Nicole Estefan is live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Yeah, I spoke with one of the victims' mothers this evening. She tells me this arrest gives her some relief, but certainly not closure, as a teenager is being held, waiting arraignment on a charge of murder. Less than 2 weeks ago, a chaotic scene on General Street in Providence. Inside this apartment, 3 victims shot to death. 22-year-old Damien Cologne, 23-year-old Shemeeka Barros, and 23-year-old Michael Martin. A growing memorial outside the home of the tragic scene. Well, police announce an arrest has been made. An unidentified teenager is in custody. He's expected to be arraigned on a charge of murder. The mother of one of the victims, Liz Cologne, sharing this statement with Eyewitness News, quote, "We are deeply hurt by the loss of our son Damien. We are pleased that the Providence Police has worked diligently to apprehend those responsible. We look forward to more arrests. Damien, Shemeeka, and Mike all deserve justice." Again, that arraignment is scheduled for tomorrow in family court. Police have not confirmed if any other arrests have been made. We're live in Providence this evening with the Mobile Newsroom. Nicole Estefan, Eyewitness News.
Eyewitness News has learned new developments in the triple homicide we've been tracking since last month.
2 teenagers are being held at the state training school right now, charged in the murder of 3 people inside a Providence apartment nearly 2 weeks ago.
Eyewitness News was the first to report the first arrest yesterday live at 5, and only our cameras were rolling when a second suspect was taken into custody late last night.
Eyewitness News reporter Shemeeka has been on top of the story all day. She joins us now with more on what she's learned from the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
The teenage triple homicide suspects face 3 counts of murder each, in addition to several other charges. This comes about a week after the families of the victims said goodbye to their loved ones. For the families of triple homicide victims Damien Colon, Shemeeka Barros, and Michael Martin, their pain will never go away.
He was my only child. He was my life. And now I have nothing. I don't have no grandchildren, no nothing.
But the wounds of loss began to heal Thursday morning when police arrested the first suspect in the triple homicide. The second suspect arrested here on Douglas Avenue Thursday night. The grandmother of that suspect tells Eyewitness News her grandson didn't do it.
My grandson is innocent, and I don't know why they're trying to pin this heinous, horrible incident on him.
The 2 teen suspects were arraigned in family court Friday, but the Attorney General says there could be another arraignment.
It is the intent of the Office of Attorney General that we will seek to waive them into adult court for these crimes.
Police say the suspects knew the victims who were inside this apartment on General Street in Providence, the home of Shemeeka Barros and Michael Martin.
The motive was robbery. Again, I'm going to leave a lot out because of the prosecution of the case.
Prosecution, the families hope, will lead to a punishment that fits the crime.
These kids died way too soon and in a horrible way, and I hope justice prevails.
Coming up new at 6, we will have more from both the families of the victims and the suspects. We'll also have more information about those young suspects, just 16 and 17, but police say both have lengthy criminal histories. With the Providence Mobile Newsroom, I'm Shemeeka, Eyewitness News.
Providence. Police say robbery was the motive for 2 teenagers charged in a triple homicide in a Providence apartment. A 16-year-old and a 17-year-old were arrested Thursday in the July 30th killings. Their names have not been released. They were arraigned in family court Friday on 3 charges each of murder and use of a firearm while committing a crime of violence and 1 count of conspiracy to commit robbery. They were ordered held. Attorney General Peter Kilmartin said his office will seek to try them as adults. The victims were Shemeeka Barros, 22, Michael Martin, 23, and Damien Colon, 22. 3 children were home during the attack and were unhurt. There have been 12 homicides in Providence this year, the same number of homicides in all of 2011.
Local musicians are gathering tonight to honor a young mother killed in a tragic triple homicide. Shemeeka Barros was one of 3 people gunned down inside a Providence apartment back in July, along with her boyfriend and a friend. 2 teens are now charged with their murders. Tonight, more than a dozen performers are scheduled to take the stage at a benefit concert to raise money for the children and siblings of Shemeeka Barros. It'll begin at 7 p.m. at the Spot Underground in Providence.
But first, we're working breaking news in a triple homicide investigation. One of the juvenile suspects accused of killing Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon in July is going to be tried as an adult. 16-year-old Quandel husband was arraigned in district court this afternoon and charged with 3 counts of murder. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly is there now live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Yes, it was a rare triple murder here in Providence, and today, one of the 2 people accused in the crime was moved from juvenile court to adult court. Emotions ran high outside the Maplewood Terrace complex in Providence in late July after 3 people were shot and killed inside an apartment. 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, 22-year-old Damien Colon, and 23-year-old Michael Martin. 3 children were inside the apartment too, but the police say they were in another room and were not hurt.
Mr. Quandel, husband? Yes. Your date of birth, please? 6/17/96.
Today, a judge moved one of 2 teenagers charged with the triple murder, 16-year-old Quandel, husband, from juvenile court to adult court, where if he's convicted, the punishment would be significantly harsher. Afterwards, relatives and friends of the 3 murder victims chose not to talk with news reporters. But earlier, Michael Martin's stepfather focused on the need for justice.
These kids died way too soon and in a horrible way. And I hope justice prevails.
Quandel husband held without bail, at least until a bail hearing set for November 7th. Live at District Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
But first tonight, we are tracking breaking news in a triple homicide investigation. A second teenage suspect accused in the murders of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cologne back on July is now going to be tried as an adult. This afternoon, 17-year-old Russell Burrell was arraigned on 3 counts of murder. Eyewitness News reporter Catherine Sockning joins us now live from the mobile newsroom with the very latest.
Well, Mike, this was a shocking crime, of course, and police say the motive was robbery. Now the teenage suspects are facing judges, but they're facing those judges as adults. Cries of agony outside the Maplewood Terrace complex in late July after 3 people were shot and killed inside an apartment. 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, 22-year-old Damien Cologne, and 23-year-old Michael Martin. Today, a judge waived 17-year-old Russell Burrell of Vesey Street out of family court, allowing him to be tried as an adult for the murders.
Quandel husband?
On Friday, another suspect, 16-year-old Quandel husband, was also charged as an adult. Both suspects are facing 3 counts of murder. Police say 3 children were in the apartment that July night, but they were not injured. On Friday, Michael Martin's stepfather told us justice needs to be served.
These kids died way too soon and in a horrible way. And I hope justice prevails.
And we've learned that both suspects will be back in court in November. Reporting live tonight with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, I'm Catherine Sotnick.
We're working the latest developments on a triple murder in the capital city. Bail hearings are underway for 2 teenagers accused in the July shooting. It's the first public testimony in the case. The Providence Journal reports that a witness claimed to see 2 suspects, 17-year-old Quandel husband and 16-year-old Russell Burrell, take off running from the scene on General Street after hearing gunshots. Prosecutors say the incident was a robbery gone bad. A judge ordered the suspects held without bail until the hearing continues on Thursday.
Providence, RI. A man accused of arranging a robbery that led to last summer's triple homicide is being isolated from other inmates for his own protection. Donovan Hall, 19, is charged with the murders of Shemeeka Barros, 22, her boyfriend Michael Martin, 23, and their friend Damien Cologne, 22, inside Barros' apartment in Woonsocket last July. Hall is the 3rd person charged in the murders, and police say the investigation is ongoing. Hall is believed to have arranged for 2 16-year-old boys to rob Martin, according to a search warrant and court testimony at a bail hearing for one of the teenagers. The botched robbery led to murder, the police say. Russell Burrell and Quandel husband, now 17, are facing murder charges as adults. Man pleads guilty in triple homicide. 3 alleged conspirators indicted. Providence, RI. The man accused of arranging the robbery that led to a triple homicide last summer has pleaded guilty to the murders. Donovan Hall, 19, pleaded guilty Friday to 3 counts of murder and conspiracy to commit robbery just 6 days after being arrested. The Attorney General's office announced Hall's guilty plea as a Providence County grand jury indicted 3 of his alleged conspirators, 2 teenagers and a man already sentenced to 50 years in prison for another shooting. Quandel husband and Russell Burrell, both 17, and Timothy Beeper DeBrito, 27, are indicted on 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence, and 1 count of conspiracy. They will be arraigned Monday. Shemeeka Barros, her boyfriend Michael Martin and their friend Damien Cologne were shot to death on July 30.
But first tonight, 3 suspected killers, 2 of them teenagers, answered to charges in a tragic triple murder case.
It is a shocking case we've been on top of since last July when 2 men and a woman were gunned down inside a Providence apartment in what police believe was a botched robbery attempt. 1
suspect has already pleaded guilty in connection with the crime, and today 3 co-defendants faced a judge.
Eyewitness News reporter Nicole Estefan is live outside Providence Superior Court with the latest developments.
Well, I can tell you this was an emotional day in the courtroom. We're talking about 6 families here, 3 families for the accused and 3 families for the victims, and altogether 9 counts of murder.
All rise.
1 man, 2 teenagers, between them 9 counts of murder.
Not guilty as to all counts.
Not guilty to all counts, Your Honor.
Not guilty pleas were entered for Russell Burrell, Quandel husband, and Timothy DeBrito in Superior Court on Monday. The charges stem from a triple homicide in this General Street home last year. It claimed 3 young lives: Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cologne. Investigators say the 3 men conspired to rob the home, and during the process of that robbery, shot and killed all 3 victims. The eldest of the accused, Timothy DeBrito, has a lengthy criminal past. He was recently sentenced to 50 years in prison on an unrelated shooting last May involving a romantic rival. As DeBrito left the courtroom on Monday, he stared down the prosecution. Now, a 4th man, Donovan Hall, waived indictment in this case and pleaded guilty. He will be sentenced at a later date. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we will have very emotional reaction from one of the victim's cousins. We're live in Providence with the mobile newsroom. Nicole Estefan, Eyewitness News.
New suspect and 2 others indicted for Prov triple homicide March 4, 2013. 3:40 p.m. ABC 6 News. Copyright photo of husband from first arraignment. 3 individuals were arraigned on murder charges in Providence Superior Court as a result of a triple homicide that took place on General Street last July. Russell Burrell, 17, Quandel husband, 16, and Timothy DeBrito, 26, are accused of shooting and killing Shemeeka Barros, 22, Michael Martin, 23, and Damien Cologne, 22, during a robbery gone wrong. It is alleged that the 3 entered Barros and Martin's apartment to commit robbery, and when they saw Martin and Cologne, they shot and killed them. Barros was also shot after she was awoken by gunfire.
Now we're working the latest developments in a triple murder investigation. Shemeeka Barros, Damien Cologne, and Michael Martin were shot and killed inside a Providence apartment last summer. Today, 3 of the 4 suspects charged in the case were arraigned in court. Eyewitness News reporter Nicole Estefan is there now live in the capital city.
Well, that's right. We have a lot of people involved in this case. We have 3 men charged, and I shouldn't even say men, 2 of them just teenagers, and we have 3 victims, all of their families present in the courtroom today, and for some, it was very emotional.
I miss Mika. Her mom misses her. And I hope they get everything they deserve.
Large in number, hearts heavy in sorrow. Family of Shemeeka Barros left Superior Court on Monday, moments after 3 men accused in the triple homicide that claimed her life pleaded not guilty.
Not guilty as to all counts.
Not guilty to all counts, Your Honor.
1 man, 2 teenagers. Between them, 9 counts of murder. Not guilty pleas were entered for Russell Burrell, Quandel husband, and Timothy DeBrito in Superior Court. The charges stem from a triple homicide in this General Street home last year. It claimed 3 young lives: Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cologne.
You cannot take the liberty to just take life from people.
Investigators say the 3 men conspired to rob the home, and during the process of that robbery, shot and killed all 3 victims. We asked the cousin of Shemeeka Barros what went through her mind when she saw the men accused of taking her loved one's life.
I pray that God has mercy on them. Okay? That's all.
All 3 of the accused in this case will be back in court on March 15th. We're live in Providence with the mobile newsroom. Nicole Estefan, Eyewitness News.
Working some breaking news now on the murders of 3 people. 4 men were charged following the killings last summer in the capital city. One of those men is facing a judge today in the case. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joining us live from court now with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Yes, Patrick, we're here at Superior Court in Providence, where a distressing triple murder from back in the summer of 2012 is in play now here at court. One of 4 defendants in this case, a man by the name of Russell Burrell, who at the time was 17, but who is now 18, is being tried as an adult. And on top of that, we are told that he is expected to plead guilty to all 3 murders. That has not happened yet. The key word there is expected to plead. He could still change his mind. Here's a quick history of the case. It was a triple murder that rocked Providence in July of 2012. Eventually, 4 males, 2 men and 2 boys were charged with murder in the shootings of 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, her boyfriend, 23-year-old Michael Martin, and a friend of theirs, 22-year-old Damien Cologne. The police say a botched robbery led to the 3 murders. 2 of the 4 accused were juveniles at the time, who are now being tried as adults after being waived out of family court. One of those two, Russell Burrell, is due in court today on 3 murder charges. Another of the 4 defendants, Donovan Hall, pleaded guilty back in March to all 3 murders. He has not yet been sentenced. The 3 murder charges against the other 2 defendants, Quandell Husband and Timothy Beeper DeBrito, have not yet been litigated in court. We've been waiting here all morning for today's court hearing to begin, and just now, just before I came out here to go on camera and report what we know, a family member of one of the victims, Shemeeka Barros, that victim, this family member says all she wants is justice. Live here at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
One of 4 suspects in 2012 triple murder pleads guilty. One of 4 men charged in a Providence triple homicide last year pleads guilty. 18-year-old Russell Burrell could now face 6 consecutive life sentences for killing Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin and Damien Cullen in July of 2012. A second teen charged in the murders pleaded guilty earlier this year. 2 other suspects are awaiting trial.
Working the latest developments on a triple murder investigation in Providence. One of the suspects, Russell Burrell, pleaded guilty today, admitting to shooting and killing all 3 victims, Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon. New at 6, we're learning more about one of those victims' final moments. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now live outside Providence Superior Court.
Susan, a courtroom packed with relatives of the victims heard a chilling play-by-play description of a triple murder that appalled Providence back in the summer of 2012.
Russell Burrell shot
a prosecutor describing a triple murder rooted in a robbery attempt.
After the group agreed to commit the robbery with the gun, Russell Burrell armed himself with this black 9mm handgun.
18-year-old Russell Burrell is one of 4 people, 2 men and 2 boys, prosecutors say are responsible for shooting and killing 3 people. 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros, her boyfriend, 23-year-old Michael Martin, and a friend of theirs, 22-year-old Damien Colon. The prosecutor said he and another man and a boy went into Michael Martin's first-floor apartment armed with a 9mm Glock handgun and intending to steal money and marijuana. The prosecutor described a chilling triple murder to which Russell Burrell pleaded guilty.
As Russell Burrell was firing at Mr. Martin and Mr. Colon in the kitchen, Shemeeka Barros woke up from the couch in the living room. Upon realizing that Miss Barros was present in the apartment, Russell Burrell pointed the gun at her and fired it, striking and killing Shemeeka Barros.
A woman who had been asleep during the first 2 murders had the bad luck to wake up and become the 3rd murderer. Left alive were her 2 young daughters. Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
All right, new details now on a triple murder in Providence. One of the defendants pleads guilty.
And tonight, for the first time, we're hearing new information about what led to the tragic killings. Mario Hilario is live in the studio with details. Mario?
Hi, Patrice Jean. Russell Burrell, now 18 years old, was a juvenile at the time of the killings. He was waived out of family court and would have been tried as an adult. But with today's guilty plea, he faces up to 6 consecutive life sentences for the murders of 3 people.
This time, then, Mr. Burrell, do you plead guilty or not guilty to these 7 charges?
Guilty, Your Honor. And with that, the course of a murder case changes. 18-year-old Russell Burrell pleads guilty to the murders of 3 people, Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon. Burrell, the trigger man.
Russell Burrell fired the 9mm Glock handgun repeatedly at and in the direction of Mr. Martin and Mr. Colon, who were close together at the back wall of the kitchen.
The state says Burrell, along with co-defendants Quandell Husband and Timothy DeBrito, as well as others, came up with a plan to rob Martin in his General Street apartment in Providence, July 30th of 2012. They believed Martin would have both marijuana and money.
Although Mr. Martin was thought to be a soft target, the group agreed that they should have a gun with them to ensure success in carrying out the robbery.
Prosecutors say the intruders were going through kitchen drawers looking for things to steal before shooting Martin and Colon, whom they did not expect to be there. Also a surprise, the presence of Shemeeka Barros, who was asleep on the living room couch. She woke up when the first shots were fired.
Upon realizing that Miss Barros was present in the apartment, Russell Burrell pointed the gun at her and fired it, striking and killing Shemeeka Barros.
3 young children were also in the apartment at the time of the killings. The state says a witness who heard the gunshots was ready to testify. He saw Burrell, whom he knew, fleeing the victim's apartment.
Now, Burrell will be sentenced February 28th. One co-defendant, Donovan Hall, pleaded guilty in March for his role in the case. Two others, Quandel husband and Timothy DeBrito, are still awaiting trial. Live in the studio, Mario Hilario, NBC 10 News.
Providence, RI. The man who claims to have given a gun to two 16-year-olds and an 18-year-old to commit a robbery that ended in a triple murder, pleaded guilty Friday and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Timothy DeBrito, nicknamed Beeper, stood in shackles before Superior Court Judge Robert Krause but had nothing to say to the tearful families of Shemeeka Barros 22, Michael Martin 23, and Damien 22. But DeBrito has agreed to speak against another defendant accused in the triple homicide. Quandel husband, now 17, is still awaiting trial. Husband is the only one left, now that DeBrito and two other defendants have pleaded guilty to the murders. Barros, 22, her boyfriend Martin, 23, and their friend Colin, 22, were shot to death in Barros' apartment in the Arbor Glen housing complex on July 30, 2012. Prosecutor Randall White said the three were murdered because a group of 4 young men came up with a plan to rob Martin, who they thought had marijuana and money. DeBrito had a gun, the 9mm Glock, with a 17-round magazine, had been passed around them before, White said. DeBrito had used it to shoot a romantic rival, a crime for which he's already serving time. DeBrito gave the gun to then 16-year-old Russell Burrell, who went to Barros' apartment with Donovan Hall and 16-year-old husband, White said. But they didn't expect Colin, who'd dropped by for a visit. The teens barked orders and herded the 2 men into the kitchen, where Burrell suddenly shot them to death. The gunfire woke up Barros, who screamed, and Burrell silenced her by killing her. The only survivors were Barros' 2 young daughters, her younger brother, and her small Chihuahua mixed dog. Hall, 19, pleaded guilty in March 2013, that he arranged the robbery of Martin. Burrell, now 18, pleaded guilty in November to firing 17 rounds and killing the 3 people. Neither have been sentenced yet. Husband is the last one left. In exchange for DeBrito's plea and commitment to testify in a trial, the Attorney General's office agreed to amend the charges against him to 3 counts of second-degree murder, 3 counts of discharging a firearm, and kept the conspiracy charge. The court also reduced a sentence that DeBrito is serving for shooting and wounding a romantic rival, from 50 years to 30. By the time DeBrito, now 28, is released from the adult correctional institutions, his 4 children will be middle-aged. Colin's grandmother Terry Plant clutched a framed photograph of him at his confirmation at St. Patrick's Church. "It is beyond words how much anguish and grief you put on my family," Plant said haltingly through tears. "You took from us a kind and gentle person." Colin's mother, Elizabeth, held a page that she had written during a sleepless night before the sentencing. That summer before Damien Colin died, his family had been at the height of happiness, with no way of knowing they were about to be broken in a million pieces. She told the court, "Their lives now consist of an empty chair at Thanksgiving, one less stocking at Christmas, and singing happy birthday to a headstone," she said, barely able to speak. As Colin's father Jorge stood holding her, she still waits for his footsteps, his key in the front door, and the sound of him rummaging in the refrigerator. There is no sense of normalcy anymore. It's a void, a hole, and an emptiness that will never be filled, she said.
New developments in a triple murder as one of the suspects changes his plea to guilty. It's a story we've been tracking every step of the way since July of 2012.
Before one of the suspects was sentenced today, loved ones of the 3 victims faced him with emotional words. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly was inside Providence Superior Court during today's emotional sentencing and joins us live there with more details.
A mother and a grandmother broke down today, mourning the loss of a loved one as his killer pleaded guilty to a horrifying triple murder.
There's a void, a hole, and an emptiness that will never be filled.
The air was thick with pain as the family of 22-year-old Damien Colon spoke eloquently of their loss. This is what murder means.
Timothy DeBrito. It is beyond words how much pain and anguish and grief you have put on my family.
Damien Colon was one of 3 people shot and killed 2 years ago in the Arbor Glen housing complex in Providence. He was visiting the other 2, his friends, 22-year-old Shemeeka Barros and her boyfriend, 23-year-old Michael Martin. Today, one of 4 people accused in the triple murder pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, 28-year-old Timothy DeBrito. He joins 2 of the other 4 men who already have pleaded guilty. The 4th is still awaiting trial.
Striking and killing.
Prosecutors say the motive of the murders was money and marijuana.
I accept you're guilty.
A judge sentenced Timothy DeBrito to serve 40 years in prison. The families of the deceased still can't understand.
How did this happen? How could Damien be murdered? How did someone like my son get robbed of his entire life? Full of opportunity and goals.
Damien Colon's birthday was exactly 1 week away from the day he died. How his family celebrates his birthday now is heartbreaking. That's new at 6. Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
Jury selection has begun for one of the suspects charged in a triple murder in Providence. 17-year-old Quandel husband is being tried as an adult. Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon were shot and killed inside a General Street apartment in 2012. 3 other suspects have been charged in connection with the murders.
Jury in triple murder trial hears opening statements. Visit scene of 2012 Providence slaying Providence. Prosecutors say 18-year-old Quandel husband plotted with 3 other men to rob an acquaintance of money and marijuana in a botched plan that ended with 3 people dead in July 2012. When the group reconvened after the deadly shooting, it was husband who exclaimed expletive happens. Assistant Attorney General James Baum told jurors Wednesday in opening statements at husband's triple murder trial. While husband might not have been the shooter, he is just as culpable as his 3 co-conspirators, all who admitted to their crimes, Baum said. But husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briety, said prosecutors, the police and even witnesses got it wrong. Damien Colon photo. He wasn't there, Briety said. Husband was about a mile away at home with his family, he said. Husband, perhaps, doesn't make a model citizen, student or prisoner, Briety said. He's a teenage boy. Young men can be wrongfully accused. Husband is one of 4 men, 3 in their teens, accused in the triple murder of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin and Damien Colon in apartment 1A at 151 General Street, in the Arbor Glen housing complex. Husband was arrested just weeks after his 16th birthday, and charged with his alleged role in the murders of the young couple, Barros and Martin, and their friend, who was visiting, wearing a white, untucked, collared shirt, khakis and glasses. Husband listened attentively with no expression as lawyers delivered opening statements. The jury of 9 women and 5 men closed the day with a tour of the Arbor Glen neighborhood led by Assistant Attorney General Randy White and Briety. Jurors saw the 17 Middle Drive apartment where prosecutors say husband plotted to rob Martin, a soft target known for selling good weed, with Timothy Beeper DeBrito, Donovan Hall, and his good friend Russell Burrell. They peeked through the entrance at 151 General Street toward the apartment where Martin and Barros lived. They saw what Baum described as a hole from one of the bullets Burrell fired from a 9mm Glock at Martin and Colon after Burrell herded the men into the kitchen at gunpoint as husband and Hall rifled through drawers searching for drugs. Jurors viewed the windows to the living room, where Barros was shot to death as she slept on the couch after a day at school, Baum said. Prosecutors, too, pointed out the bedroom where they say 3 children, 2 belonging to Barros, slept as the shooting occurred in the next room. The men fled the apartment with 2 sacks of marijuana before meeting up again at DeBrito's place, Baum said. Briety warned jurors to be cautious in assessing witnesses' testimony. Some, he said, are simply mistaken in thinking they saw husband running from 151 General Street after the shooting. Some are not truthful because they are protecting themselves, Briety said. The trial resumes Thursday before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause.
New details on a triple murder in Providence. Opening statements started this afternoon in Quandel husband's trial. He and 3 others are charged in connection with the 2012 shootings that killed Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon. Husband was 16 years old at the time the crime was committed. He is being tried as an adult.
Providence. R.I. A teenager identified murder suspect Quandel husband as one of the 2 men he saw run from an Arbor Glen apartment when gunshots rang out July 30, 2012. Jose Hernandez, 18, told jurors he was walking to buy Snickers bars when he saw husband and Russell Burrell pull up their hoodies and run from 151 General Street. He knew both teenagers from playing foosball, air hockey and other games with them at the Woonsocket Boys and Girls Club. Do you have any doubt you saw Quandle? Assistant Attorney General Randall White asked. No, Hernandez said. Hernandez was the first witness in 18-year-old husband's trial for the slayings of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin and Damien Cullen in apartment 1A at 151 General Street, at the housing complex. Prosecutors accuse husband of plotting with Burrell and 2 others to rob Martin of money and marijuana in a botched plan that ended with Martin and his girlfriend dead along with their friend. Husband denies the charges through his lawyer, Thomas G. Briety. He asserts that Hernandez and other witnesses have misidentified husband as being at the scene when, in fact, he was at home with his family. His alleged co-conspirators, Burrell, Timothy Beeper DeBrito and Donovan Hall, have admitted to their roles in the triple homicide. Burrell, 18, pleaded guilty to being the gunman and faces up to 6 life sentences, plus 10 years. At sentencing, Hernandez was hanging out with his little brother, then girlfriend and neighbors around 10 p.m., June 30th. 2012, when he had a candy bar craving and decided to head to the store. He told jurors he was almost at the corner of West Drive and General Street when he heard 2 gunshots, followed rapidly by 7 or so more. He turned to the left and saw husband and Burrell on the stoop at 151 General Street. He said, seconds later, they pulled up their hoods and dashed off. He later heard that a man he bought marijuana from, Mike, had been shot to death. Hernandez said. Briety asked Hernandez about his statement to the police in which he said he saw Burrell but that he wasn't sure if it's Quandle or anybody else. Hernandez acknowledged telling the police he was unsure about husband, but after prodding by Briety blurted out it was because I was afraid of him. Hernandez, too, acknowledged being arrested by the Providence police this week after refusing to testify at husband's trial. He was held at police headquarters for 2 nights preceding his testimony. You don't want to make police mad at you, do you? Briety said. No, Hernandez said. You don't want it to be known on the streets that you identified husband, do you? Briety continued. Because I'm scared, that's why, Hernandez said, eliciting a yes from some of the dozen or so friends and family of the victims watching the proceedings. Under redirect by White, Hernandez told jurors that the family had gotten financial help from the Attorney General's office to move from Arbor Glen to an undisclosed location because they feared for their safety. His reluctance to testify was also the result of fear, Hernandez said. He had been approached by a man he knew to be husband's friend after he had toured Arbor Glen with prosecutors several weeks ago in preparation for trial. He said, the man told him he was looking for someone named Jose and that his friend, husband, was locked up and wanted to know who was snitching. Hernandez told jurors. The man said he had listened to tapes of Burrell's bail hearing in which Hernandez had testified. Hernandez said, did that scare you? White asked. Yes, Hernandez said. White asked why he thought the Providence police had taken him into custody. Because I know something and I don't want to say it, he said. Were you afraid of Quandle? White said. Yes, Hernandez said. Were you friendly with Quandle? White said. Yes, Hernandez said. Are you conflicted about Quandle today? White said. Yes, Hernandez said. He again told jurors he was pretty sure it was husband he saw on the porch. He also acknowledged sending Facebook messages identifying Burrell and husband as the killers hours after the shootings. The trial resumes Friday before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause.
We have an update on the trial of one of the suspects charged in a triple murder in Providence. The Providence Journal reports that Quandel husband's lawyers cross-examined the first eyewitness who testified that he saw husband at the scene just after hearing gunshots. The witness was arrested at one point for refusing to testify. Husband and 3 others are charged in connection with the 2012 shootings that killed Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon. Husband was 16 at the time of the crime was committed. He is being tried as an adult.
And Providence. R.I., an alleged accomplice in a 2012 triple slaying in the city's North End, admitted Tuesday that it was his plan to rob his marijuana dealer of drugs and money. That is until a gun came into the plan. This was your plan. This was your robbery, said Thomas G. Briety, the lawyer for one of Donovan Hall's alleged co-conspirators. Quandle, husband, now on trial for 3 counts of murder, conspiracy, and firearms charges in Superior Court, until the gun came into the situation. Hall, 20, of Providence, said. Hall has testified that he fled the 151 General Street apartment of his dealer, Michael Martin, after seeing Russell Burrell fire a 9mm Glock pistol into Martin's stomach. You abandoned them in the apartment, is that right? Bryody said. Yes, Hall said. You had just behaved like a coward. Bryody said. No, Hall said. You ran when the gun went off. Bryody said. That wasn't my plan, Hall said of the shootings. Hall agreed in March 2013 to plead guilty to 3 counts of murder and conspiracy to commit robbery, in exchange for his testimony against his alleged co-conspirators. State prosecutors have agreed to recommend a sentence ranging between 3 concurrent life terms to 3 consecutive life terms at a later sentencing before Judge Robert D. Krause. Husband, 18, is accused of conspiring with Hall, Burrell, and Timothy DeBrito to rob Martin in a botched robbery that ended in the slayings of Martin, his girlfriend Shemeeka Barros and their friend Damien. Husband listened to Hall with little expression, his hand often on his chin. The 2 men stared at each other occasionally without emotion. The victim's friends and family filled half the courtroom benches, with husband's supporters sitting in the front row.
Now we're tracking the latest developments in a triple murder trial. Quandel husband is one of 4 suspects charged in connection with a 2012 shooting that left 3 people dead. Today, one of his alleged accomplices took the stand to testify about what happened that night. Eyewitness News reporter Todd Wallace joins us now live with more from the mobile newsroom.
And Shannon, this is the 2nd week in the trial of 18-year-old Quandel husband. He's accused of being an accomplice in a triple murder in Providence back in 2012. Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros, and their friend Damien were all gunned down in an apartment on General Street in Providence in July of 2012. The Attorney General's office tells Eyewitness News that 20-year-old Donovan Hall continued to testify against 18-year-old Quandel husband in his murder trial Tuesday afternoon. Our news partners at the Providence Journal report Hall admitted that it was his plan to rob Martin of marijuana and money, quote, until the gun came into the situation. While husband is on trial, 3 men involved in the triple murder have already pled guilty. Timothy DeBrito pled guilty in March and was sentenced to 40 years. Russell Burrell pled guilty on November 26th of last year and is awaiting sentencing. And Donovan Hall pled guilty in March of 2013 and is also awaiting sentencing. And our news partners with the Providence Journal say that husband denies the charges and in fact says that he was with relatives at the time of the shootings. If he is found guilty, husband could spend the rest of his life behind bars. With the mobile newsroom, Todd Wallace, Eyewitness News.
Shooter in 2012 triple homicide. Cooley describes crime. Providence, RI. The admitted shooter in a triple homicide on Thursday. Cooley described gunning down a young couple and their friend in a robbery gone awry in the city's North End in July 2012. Russell Burrell, who was 16 at the time of the shooting, took the stand in the trial of Quandel husband, one of his alleged co-conspirators in the triple slaying. Glancing often at his once friend, Burrell stopped short of placing husband at the scene, saying he was not sure who accompanied him and another teenager in the botched robbery that ended with 3 dead. As Burrell spoke, husband's family watched from the front row. Audible sighs could be heard from the victim's family members, some of whom were in tears. Donovan Hall, 18, approached him and his cousin Timothy DeBrito about robbing his marijuana dealer of drugs and money. Burrell said, "He had a lick," he said, referring to the slang word for robbery. Hall thought they could net a couple of pounds of weed and a couple of thousands of dollars, he said. The night of the robbery, July 30th, 2012, there was discussion about who would take the 9mm Glock with the red laser sight. "I took it," Burrell said, asked by Assistant Attorney General Randall White who was in the room other than DeBrito, Hall and Burrell. Burrell said, "I'm not sure. Was it a boy or a girl? I'm not sure. Did the other person also wear a black hoodie? I'm not sure." Hall rang the doorbell at 151 General Street and an unknown white man answered the door. He led them through a dark living room to the kitchen, where another darker-skinned guy sat at the table. He said, "I pulled the gun out," Burrell said. "There was no plan to shoot." He asked the white man, later identified as Michael Martin, "Where's the expletive?" Martin told him, "In the drawer." "Did more than one person look in the drawer?" White said. "I'm not sure," Burrell said. "Did at least one person look in the drawer?" White said. "Yes." Burrell said. "What happened next?" White said. "I shot," Burrell said. "And the next thing?" White said. "I shot the other on." Burrell said, referring to Damien. What happened to him? White asked of the first to be shot, Martin. He was bleeding, Burrell said. Someone said "oh" expletive as they went to leave. Burrell said he turned toward the living room and noticed a girl, Shemeeka Barros, on the couch. What did you do? White said, I shot her, Burrell said. Burrell has pleaded guilty to his role in the triple homicide and is due to be sentenced at a later date by Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause. Gunman gives conflicting accounts of deadly Providence robbery. Providence, RI. On Thursday, Russell Burrell, admitted shooter in a triple murder, swore that his statement to police in March was the truth. On Friday, he testified that large chunks of his story to prosecutors and police were true except the parts referring to Quandel husband, his good friend and the half-uncle of his 2 young children. Burrell, who was 16 when he shot 3 people to death, took the stand for a second day in the triple murder trial of 18-year-old husband. Prosecutors say husband and Burrell plotted with 2 others to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money in a robbery that went awry and left 3 people dead. Burrell pleaded guilty in November to 3 counts each of first-degree murder and discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence that resulted in death and a single count of conspiracy. On the advice of his lawyer John J. Canham Jr., Burrell reached out to prosecutors several months later expressing his willingness to speak about the events of July 30, 2012. Prior to sentencing, Assistant Attorney General Randall White asked Burrell Friday about his guilty plea, noting that he had admitted under oath that husband had been part of the botched robbery that ended with 3 dead. Yup, Burrell said. And, White continued, Burrell had reached out to give a statement knowing that the sentence he received would reflect how Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause perceived his acknowledgement of his role in the crimes and the roles of others involved. Yup, Burrell said. White noted that Burrell told police in March that he called husband the night of July 30, 2012, to tell him it was time to do a lick, street slang for robbery. 15 minutes later husband arrived on foot at the Arbor Glen housing complex. He said, "Did you call Quandel?" White asked Friday. "No," Burrell said, glancing often at his friend and the husband family filling the front row. He lived with the husband family occasionally after being released from the Rhode Island training school in May 2012. He said, and has 2 children, one he has never seen, with husband's half-sister, Quinacia Hines. Did he come over? White said. No, Burrell said. Burrell returns to the stand Friday afternoon. Confessed gunman in triple murder tells jurors he felt he had to implicate his friend Providence. R.I. The admitted gunman in a triple homicide told jurors Monday that he felt he had to implicate his good friend and half-uncle to his children, Quandel husband, in the killings. Russell Burrell, who was 16 when he shot 3 people to death, took the stand for a 3rd day in the triple murder trial of 18-year-old husband. Was it your idea to say that Quandel was part of the conspiracy? Husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briety, asked. No, Burrell answered. Did you feel you had to say that? Briety said. Yes, Burrell said. Burrell pleaded guilty in November to conspiring with husband and 2 others to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money in a robbery that went bad and ended with a young couple and their friend dead. He will be sentenced by Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause at a later date and faces up to 6 consecutive life sentences in prison for his "you were trying to save yourself at that point, weren't you?" Briety said of Burrell's statement to police implicating himself and husband in shortly after the shootings. "You don't want to die in prison, do you?" Briety said. No, Burrell said. But you're worried about that, aren't you? Briety said. Yup, Burrell said. Burrell said he agreed to talk to prosecutors about his and husband's involvement in March after consulting with his lawyer, John J. Canham Jr. Burrell acknowledged that his longtime girlfriend and the mother of his 2 children, husband's half-sister, Quinacia Hines, and her family were not there when he implicated husband. Hines as well as husband's parents have been seated in the front row of the courtroom for much of Burrell's testimony.
A star witness in the Luis Fatboy Gonzalez murder trial is now testifying in the Quandel husband trial. That's according to the Providence Journal. Ricardo Vasquez is serving a life sentence in prison for his role in the shooting death of 12-year-old Anise Vargas. Yesterday, he told the court about his encounters with husband in prison and what husband told him about the night Russell Burrell shot and killed 3 people inside a Providence apartment. Vasquez returns to the stand tomorrow.
The state rested its case Wednesday against an 18-year-old accused of plotting a fatal robbery with the testimony of his fellow inmate at the adult correctional institutions. Ricardo Vasquez, 21, took the stand for a 2nd day in the triple murder trial of Quandel husband, Vasquez is serving life in prison with the possibility of parole for his role in the shooting death of 12-year-old Enos Vargas last June. Vasquez told jurors about a conversation in the high-security unit in which he said husband detailed a plan to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money that went bad and ended with 3 people dead July 30, 2012. Under questioning by husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briety, Vasquez recounted his own criminal past as a juvenile, which included charges that he possessed a stolen motor vehicle, narcotics and a knife on school grounds. Vasquez acknowledged, too, that he had been a willing member of the Harriet Street gang, and because of you and others in Harriet Street a 12-year-old girl is dead, Briety said. Yes, Vasquez responded. Vasquez said he is being held in protective custody in the high-security unit because he had agreed to testify against his co-defendants in the Enos Vargas case. You're benefiting from this, Briety said of his testimony against husband. I could definitely not get parole, Vasquez said of his 2023 parole eligibility date. The Attorney General's office has agreed to write a letter detailing his cooperation in both cases to the parole board. Briety noted that husband was 17 when he punched Vasquez, knocking him down. In a disagreement about using the prison phone, he sucker shot me. You've got that right, Vasquez said. A juvenile gave you a pasting in front of the entire CMOD, Briety said. Yup, Vasquez said. You're getting even with Mr. Husband, Briety said. No, I'm not, Vasquez said. Vasquez insisted that his account of husband telling him about the triple homicide in the prison yard was true under redirect by Assistant Attorney General Randall White.
The latest now on the Quandel husband trial. According to our news partners at the Providence Journal, husband's grandfather told jurors the teen was home with him on the night of the murder after being placed on home confinement. The prosecution rested its case yesterday following a second day of testimony from husband's jailmate. The 18-year-old and 3 others are charged in connection with the 2012 shootings that killed Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon.
Grandfather of Providence triple murder suspect testifies grandson was home at time of slayings. Providence, RI. The grandfather of an 18-year-old on trial for his alleged part in a triple murder told jurors Wednesday that the teenager was home the night of the slayings. He never left the house. He was doing the right thing, Lewis Smith said of his grandson, Quandel husband, who was on home confinement at 641 Douglas Avenue on July 30, 2012. Smith, 51. Testified as a defense witness in the trial of husband, whom prosecutors accuse of plotting with 3 others to rob a marijuana dealer in a botched robbery that left 3 dead. A 27-year Barrel Company employee, Smith said he got home around 3:20 p.m. the day of the killings. Husband stayed in his bedroom as he watched wrestling in the living room, he said. Around 10 p.m., he learned through the streets that 3 people had been killed at the Arbor Glen housing complex. He looked in on husband, who seemed normal, not nervous, out of breath or excited, he said in response to questions from husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briety. Assistant Attorney General Randall White questioned Smith about how he could see husband the entire 9 to 11 p.m. span if they were in separate rooms. Smith said he checked in on husband from time to time throughout the night. White wondered whether husband could have left through the apartment's back door during that time frame. Smith said no, that husband and other family members were always just there. White asked, too, about the day husband was arrested, August 9, 2012. Smith initially didn't know what charges husband faced. He said, I don't know if he got charged with nothing. The boy's innocent, said Smith, as his wife and family observed from the front row of Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause's courtroom in the Licht Judicial Complex. You love him very much, don't you? White asked. Yes, Smith said. You can't imagine him being involved, White said. No, Smith said. Smith said he told a Providence police sergeant, whose name he could not remember, that husband was home the night of the shootings. He made the only other statement about his grandson's innocence to husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Gulick. The state rested its case with the testimony of a fellow inmate at the adult correctional institutions, Ricardo Vasquez, 21, who took the stand for a second day. Vasquez is serving life in prison with the possibility of parole for his role in the shooting death in June 2013, of 12-year-old Enos Vargas in Providence. Vasquez told jurors about a conversation in the high-security unit in which husband detailed a plan to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money that left 3 people dead. Under questioning by Briety, Vasquez recounted his own juvenile criminal record, including charges that he possessed a stolen motor vehicle, narcotics and a knife on school grounds. Vasquez acknowledged. 2. That he had been a willing member of the Harriet Street gang. And because of you and others in Harriet Street, a 12-year-old girl is dead. Briody said. Yes, Vasquez said. Vasquez said he is being held in protective custody because he had agreed to testify against his co-defendants in the Enos Vargas case. You're benefiting from this, Briody said of his testimony against husband. I could definitely not get parole, Vasquez said of his 2023 parole eligibility date. The Attorney General's office has agreed to write a letter to the parole board at that time detailing his cooperation in both cases. Briody noted that husband was 17 when he punched Vasquez, knocking him down, in a disagreement about using the prison phone. He sucker shot me. You've got that right, Vasquez said. A juvenile gave you a pasting in front of the entire CMOD, Briody said. Yup, Vasquez said. You're getting even with Mr. Husband, Briody said. No, I'm not, Vasquez said. Vasquez insisted that his account of husband telling him about the triple homicide in the prison yard was true under redirect by White. By the way, you didn't shoot the 12-year-old girl, did you? White said. No, I didn't, Vasquez said. Vasquez said a detective told him that children had to be taken out the bedroom window the night of the triple slaying so they wouldn't see their mother dead. Did that affect you? White asked. Yes, Vasquez said. Thinking of his own children propelled him to tell the police what husband said. Like I said, I know those children will be looking for answers, so that's why I did it, Vasquez said. He came forward to help the families of the 3 victims, Michael Martin, Martin's girlfriend, Shemeeka Barros, and their friend, Damien Cullen, he said. Defense rests in trial of 18-year-old accused of triple murder and robbery gone bad, Providence, RI. The defense rested Thursday in the trial of an 18-year-old accused of triple murder with the testimony of a woman who says his alleged co-conspirator never mentioned the defendant being involved in the shootings. Ivy Copeland took the stand in the trial of Quandel Husband, who prosecutors accuse of plotting with 3 others, Timothy Beeper DeBrito, Donovan Hall and Russell Burrell, to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money in a botched heist that left 3 people dead. Copeland, 27, told jurors that Hall, 20, came to her house on Nancy Street late the night of the shootings, July 30, 2012. He arrived quiet and seemingly out of sorts. He had texted her earlier in the day that he had something to do with Beeper, she said, referring to DeBrito. She prodded him to tell her what happened. She said he said they were only supposed to get money and weed. He said Beeper had started shooting. Copeland said under questioning by husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briody, DeBrito had warned the dealer, Michael Martin, not to move, but he had tried to reach behind the refrigerator. Copeland testified. Hall told her DeBrito shot him, she said. DeBrito then shot another man and a girl who had woken up on the couch. Beeper let the whole clip out, she recalled Hall saying. Hall never mentioned husband being involved, she said. Copeland's account contradicted earlier testimony by Hall and Burrell. Both have pleaded guilty to their involvement in the triple homicide. Both told jurors it was Burrell who shot to death Martin, Martin's girlfriend, Shemeeka Barros, and their friend, Damien Cullen. Hall, too, recounted that husband had accompanied them to 151 General Street and that DeBrito had provided the 9mm handgun but stayed at his own apartment in the Arbor Glen housing complex. Burrell stopped short of saying one day that husband was at the shooting scene. The next day he denied that husband was there at all. Hall asked her to tell police that he had been with her the entire night, which she initially did, she said. He told her DeBrito would appreciate it because he was gun happy. Hall asked her to wash his clothes. Was that the truth? Briody asked. No, Copeland, the mother of 5, said. She had lied to police, she said, because she was afraid of DeBrito, who was related to her younger brothers. Closing arguments in husband's trial will take place Friday morning.
Closing arguments being held today in the trial of one of the suspects charged in a Providence triple murder. The defense rested its case yesterday. Quandel Husband and 3 others are charged in connection with the shootings that killed Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cullen inside a city apartment back in July of 2012.
Closing arguments in Providence case of 18-year-old charged in 2012 triple homicide. Providence, RI. A prosecutor and defense attorney made their final arguments Friday in the case that has examined the alleged participation of a young man in a 2012 triple murder in a housing project on the city's fringe near North Providence. The 18-year-old defendant, Quandel Husband, is accused of plotting with Timothy Beeper DeBrito, Donovan Hall and Russell Burrell to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money in a scheme that led to deaths of 3 people at the Arbor Glen complex. On the heels of a 3-week trial before Superior Court Judge Robert Krause, lawyers on both sides of the case focused heavily on testimony from witnesses as they argued over husband's involvement. In his closing argument, Assistant Attorney General Randall White argued that husband was a conspirator and he was actually present in the complex apartment when Burrell killed Michael Martin and Damien Cullen, in a home where 3 children were sleeping. He asserted that husband had shared a vivid description of how Burrell had shot and killed Martin's girlfriend, Shemeeka Barros. During a conversation with one of various witnesses who took the stand, the witness was a jailhouse informant, Ricardo Vasquez, who is serving life in prison for his role in the shooting death of 12-year-old Enos Vargas. White suggested that jurors could trust various pieces of testimony that had been provided by both the shooter, Burrell, and the mastermind of the botched home invasion, Hall. He advised jurors to give greater credence to a statement that Burrell had made before the trial, asserting that husband had been involved, and to discount Burrell's testimony at trial, which was that husband had not been involved. "I'm confident you can see through that," White said. White asked them to discount testimony from husband's grandfather who had said that he was at home at the time of the shooting. He told jurors that another witness had seen husband and Burrell leaving the crime scene, but they did not see Hall because he fled earlier. Husband's lawyer, Briety, raised about 50 questions that he suggested jurors must answer during their deliberations, focusing heavily on the reliability of testimony from convicted criminals. He reminded them that a police interrogation of Burrell initially led Burrell to falsely accuse husband of actually firing the shots. Vasquez's account, Briety argued, wasn't anything that he couldn't have obtained from reading newspaper accounts. Vasquez, like other witnesses in the case, was more interested in helping himself than anything else, Briety argued. He told jurors that both Burrell and Hall, who testified that husband had been present at the scene, had lied to police. "Please do not let them fool you," Briety said. He repeatedly emphasized that 2 of the conspirators were present at the scene, not 3, and buttressed his point with what a 911 caller had told an emergency dispatcher. Briety also argued that another witness who testified seeing husband's departure from the crime scene and had to have identified the defendant from a distance of about 240 feet, over a period of just 5 or 6 seconds. "Can you rest a conviction on that?" Briety asked.
2 years after 3 people were tragically gunned down in a Providence housing project, the fate of the final remaining suspect in that deadly crime is now in the hands of the jury. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
After deliberating for several hours this afternoon, jurors went home without reaching a verdict in a triple murder trial of a young Providence man.
These are questions that I think this jury should consider.
A defense lawyer raised more than 50 questions as he tried to plant reasonable doubt in the minds of jurors who are now deciding whether 18-year-old Quandell Husband is a triple murderer. It was a horrific crime back in July of 2012. Prosecutors say Quandell Husband is one of 4 young men involved in the murder of 3 people in an apartment in Providence during a botched robbery of marijuana and money. Shemeeka Barros, Damien Cullen, and Michael Martin. The other 3 men involved all have pleaded guilty in the triple murder. Defense lawyer Thomas Briety argued prosecutors failed to prove who went inside the apartment.
Who were those people? Who went in? Was it Veep and Russ and Donovan? Or Russ and Quandell and Donovan? Was it just Russ and Donovan? Or maybe was it Veep with Russ?
But prosecutor Randall White argued, quote, "I submit to you that this case is not a mystery story. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's a case of unspeakable horror and unimaginable tragedy, but it's not a mystery," end quote. The prosecutor urged the jurors to find Quandell Husband guilty. Now, after failing to reach a verdict after only a few hours this afternoon, the jurors will be back at it on Monday morning. Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
In the news, the jury is back deliberating today in the murder trial of Quandell Husband. Prosecution and defense rested their cases last week. Husband is accused of taking part in the killings of Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros, and Damien Cullen 2 years ago. A witness says the murders happened during an attempt to rob one of the victims of drug money.
Providence man faces 6 life sentences in a robbery turned execution. NBC 10's Mario Hilario is live with that story tonight. Mario.
Good evening, Gene. The guilty verdicts handed down this afternoon after a 3-week trial and about a full day of deliberating by the jury. Quandel husband, the only one of 4 suspects in this case to go to trial for 3 murders that occurred 2 years ago Wednesday. Quandel husband, seen here during his trial, found guilty on all counts of murdering 3 people in Providence 2 years ago. It was July 30th, 2012. Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros, and Damien Cologne were shot to death inside Martin's apartment on General Street in Providence. Husband conspired with 3 others to rob Martin, rushing into the apartment when the victim answered the door. Martin and Cologne were shot in the kitchen first. When Barros woke up to the violence, she too was then shot and killed. Husband was the only one of 4 defendants in this case to go to trial. The other 3 have already pleaded guilty for their roles in the murders. The shooter, Russell Burrell, Donovan Hall, and Timothy DeBrito, who just pleaded guilty in March. He was given a 40-year sentence. The other 2, Hall and Burrell, have yet to be sentenced. Husband facing 6 consecutive life sentences for the 3 murder charges and 3 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime causing death. After the verdict, the defendant's family, off camera, maintained his innocence, saying he couldn't be placed at the scene of the crime. But some of the victims' relatives I spoke with, also off camera, were relieved by the guilty verdicts after the difficult experience of sitting through a 3-week-long trial. No sentencing date set yet for husband. The judge did set a date of September 3rd to hear a defense motion for a new trial. Husband's defense attorney had no comment for me after the verdict today. We're live in Providence. Mario Hilario, NBC 10.
Providence. RI. A Superior Court jury on Monday found an 18-year-old Providence man guilty of all charges in the 2012 triple murder of a young couple and their friend in a robbery gone bad at the Arbor Glen housing complex in the North End. The jury of 8 women and 4 men deliberated for about 6 hours before convicting Quandel husband of 3 counts each of murder and discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence that resulted in death. Under state law, he faces a mandatory 6 life sentences on those charges as well as up to 10 years in prison for 1 count of conspiracy. Husband pursed his lips as Judge Robert D. Krause polled individual jurors on the verdict. "I agree," each said. His mother and grandmother left the courtroom and wailed in the hallway as 15 deputy sheriffs stood by. Family members of the victims, Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros and Damien Cologne, reacted in the courtroom. One called out, "Thank you, Jesus." Elizabeth Cologne, who lost her 22-year-old son in the slayings, wept on her husband's shoulder. "What a relief. I feel like I can finally breathe again. Our babies are happy," said Jamelia Barros, Shemeeka's mother. "I think about Shemeeka, Damien and Michael as one. They're my baby's family members." Many who sat through the entire trial observed that the verdict came 2 days before the 2nd anniversary of the killings. "The timing was perfect," they said. "It's been a long 2 years, and it's been a long 3.5 weeks. Elizabeth Cologne said. "Our kids are still gone, but this means we're 1 step closer." Husband turned to her husband, Jorge Cologne, and winked and smiled Monday as sheriffs prepared to lead him away. "To have the audacity," Jorge Cologne said. The families extended their gratitude to Assistant Attorneys General James Baum and Randall White and to the Providence Police for their persistence and support. The investigation was led by Detective Robert Washburn, along with Detectives Fabio Zuna, Frank C. Villela, and Theodore Michaels, and Captain Michael Correa. "If they didn't get caught, there would have been more bodies," Barros said of the 4 men charged with the killings. Barros and others had canvassed the area in the days after the murders, pleading with anyone who might have seen something to come forward. Husband was the only one of the 4 people charged. 3 were teenagers at the time of the killings, to take his case to trial. The others, Timothy Beeper DeBrito, Russell Burrell and Donovan Hall, pleaded guilty. Burrell, Hall and husband await sentencing by Krause. DeBrito, 28, was sentenced to serve 40 years in prison on top of 50 years he received for shooting a romantic rival in the months before the killings. Husband was 16 when he plotted with the others to rob Martin of drugs and money. Hall told jurors he came up with the idea because he had pegged Martin, from whom he purchased $700 in marijuana each week, as soft. Hall, 20, said he met with Burrell at DeBrito's Middle Drive apartment in preparation for the robbery. They picked July 30th, 2012, as the night, with husband joining them at the last minute. DeBrito provided the 9mm Glock pistol with a red laser sight. Burrell was delegated to carry the gun. All wore black, hooded sweatshirts. Hall, husband and Burrell cut through lawns to get to the Arbor Glen apartment at 151 General Street while DeBrito stayed behind. Hall said he tapped on the window to get Martin's attention. Martin let them in, leading them to the kitchen, where his friend, Colin, was seated at a table. Martin's girlfriend, Barros, slept on the couch in the living room. Burrell pulled out the gun, aiming it at Martin's chest. "You know what time it is. Where's the weed?" Hall recalled Burrell saying. Martin told Burrell to chill. Instead, Burrell fired the gun. Hall said, "I seen Mike get shot in the stomach," said Hall, who played video games and gambled with Martin. Hall heard more shots being fired as he fled to DeBrito's place. He said, husband and Burrell arrived 2 minutes later, with Burrell carrying $2.10 bags of marijuana. Burrell refused to even utter husband's name the first day he took the stand and had to be taken from the courtroom. He told jurors he was not sure who accompanied him in Hall. The next day, he flatly denied that husband, his friend and classmate at Valley Community School, had participated in the killings. Burrell, 18, provided the most chilling testimony, coolly describing shooting Martin, whom he called the white guy, Colin and Barros. He then hid the gun in the basement of the building he lived in with the husband family. Less than an hour before finding husband guilty, the jurors requested to listen for a second time to Burrell's recorded interview in which he told the police and prosecutors that husband had joined them that night. Burrell, who faces up to 6 consecutive life sentences, acknowledged that he had dated husband's half-sister, Quinacia Hines. Since age 11, they have 2 young children who are being raised by his grandparents. Jurors also heard from Ricardo Vasquez, who is serving life with the possibility of parole for his role in the shooting death in June 2013 of 12-year-old Enos Vargas. Vasquez, 21, testified that husband told him about the killings during recreation time at the adult correctional institutions. In convicting husband, the jury rejected his grandfather Lewis Smith's testimony that the teenager was home with his family on Douglas Avenue the night of the shootings. Husband's lawyer, Thomas G. Briety, declined comment. Thomas G. Gulick served as his co-counsel.
Eyewitness News is working developing news on a triple murder. Just hours ago, the jury in the trial of Quandel husband returned a verdict. The 18-year-old is found guilty on all counts. He was the only one of 4 suspects to go on trial for the 2012 triple murder of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cologne in Providence. Eyewitness News reporter Shantae Lance just returned from court and is live in our studio now with more details.
Steve and Shannon, the jury reached its verdict around 1:45 this afternoon, finding 18-year-old Quandel husband guilty on 7 counts, including 3 counts of first-degree murder. Quandel husband sits still and silent in court Monday. At just 18 years old, he awaits sentencing in a triple murder case. The jury found husband guilty on all 7 counts, including 3 counts of first-degree murder for the July 2012 shooting deaths of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Cologne. The 3 were shot to death in Martin's General Street apartment in Providence. Police allege husband, who was 16 at the time, plotted with 3 others to break into the apartment with the intent of stealing money and drugs. Husband is the only one of 4 suspects to go on trial.
When is the next time you talked about it after you talked about it alone with Quandel at Quandel's house?
Before reaching a verdict, the jury asked to hear a March 2014 interview with suspect Russell Burrell, who implicated Quandel several times in the murders. Burrell, Donovan Hall, and Timothy DeBrito each pleaded guilty to their roles in the murders. Russell Burrell admitted to shooting all 3 victims. Still, prosecutors told the jury husband is just as responsible for the killings. Now, this triple murder case may not be over. The judge set a court date of September 3rd to hear motions from Quandel husband's lawyers for a possible new trial. Reporting live in studio, Shantae Lands, Eyewitness.
We begin first with some breaking news in a deadly triple murder case in Providence. Less than an hour ago, a judge sentenced Quandel husband to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years in prison. A jury convicted him of murder on Monday for the deaths of 3 people back in 2012. The victims, Michael Martin, Shemeeka Barros, and Damien Cologne. 3 other men have already pleaded guilty in the case. Prosecutors say husband was not the shooter, but they say he was just as responsible for those 3 deaths. Eyewitness News reporter Tadevika Prikin joins us live with the latest now from the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Well, the sentencing lasted about 2 hours, and it was pretty emotional in court today for family on both sides. A full courtroom Thursday morning as 18-year-old Quandel husband was sentenced. Husband turned down a plea of 20 years and was sentenced Thursday to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. A superior court found husband guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of discharge of a firearm plus 1 count of conspiracy to commit a robbery. The mother and grandmother of Damien Colon, one of the men who were killed, spoke in court asking the judge to give husband the maximum penalty. The state argued that husband had a quote, dim prospect for rehabilitation and that he should face a harsh sentence despite his age. Husband's lawyer said he had a difficult upbringing and that his age should be a consideration for a more lenient penalty. Judge Robert Kraus said the crime was senseless and that he will give husband a chance to face a parole board. Kraus said the earliest that would happen is when husband is in his mid-50s. After his sentencing, husband's grandmother shouted to the courtroom that her son was innocent and that she will prove it. And coming up tonight at 5 and 6 on Eyewitness News, we'll have much more on what happened inside the courtroom and also hear from the family that spoke. Live in Providence with the mobile newsroom, Tadavika Preka on Eyewitness News.
At 5:30 tonight, killer sentenced. Another defendant learns his punishment for a Providence triple homicide. Russell Burrell is ordered to serve 6 life sentences plus 10 years in prison for his role in the July 2012 murders.
Now, he is one of 4 men charged in connection with killing Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin, and Damien Colon during a plot to steal money and drugs.
It is our top local story at 5:30 tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Jared Pliner is outside Providence Superior Court with more on today's sentencing.
Mike Kelly, good evening. Amid all the characters here, let us be clear. 19-year-old Russell Burrell, who was a juvenile at the time of the murders, was the one who emptied 17 rounds into 3 human beings. And today was his last day in civilized society for the rest of his natural life. Think of what one has to do to receive life in prison times 6 plus a decade more, and Russell Burrell did it. The 19-year-old sentenced in Superior Court Monday for murdering Shemeeka Barros, Damien Colon, both 22, and Michael Martin, 23, at Providence's Maplewood Terrace Apartments in July 2012. Burrell and 3 others conspired to rob Martin of marijuana and money, forcing their way into his apartment on that summer evening. Burrell executed Martin and Colon with a 9mm Glock as they were being herded into a rear kitchen. He then finished the magazine off on Shemeeka Barros, who had simply woken up from a nap. Russell Burrell pleaded guilty in November of 2013. A judge sentenced 2 other defendants earlier this month, including Quandel husband, age 18. A 4th waits to hear his fate. And in a statement, Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Kilmartin said Burrell's actions were not those of a misguided teenager who'd fallen in with a bad crowd, but rather of a cold-blooded and calculating killer. Now, this is the 3rd Christmas the victims' families will be out there without their loved ones. Hear from family tonight at 10 and 11, right here on Eyewitness News. But for now, live at the Providence Mobile Newsroom outside Superior Court, I'm Jared Pliner, Eyewitness News.
A Providence man has been sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences for his role in a 2012 triple homicide. Donovan Hall, 21, was sentenced by RI Superior Court Justice Melanie Wilt Thunberg in the case of 3 people gunned down in a Providence apartment during a botched robbery. Prosecutors said Hall met July 30, 2012, with Russell Burrell, Quandel husband, and Timothy DeBrito to discuss plans to rob Michael Martin for marijuana and money. Around 10 p.m. that night, Burrell, husband, and Hall walked to Martin's apartment. When Martin opened the door, the 3 rushed him and Damien Colon, who also was in the apartment. Burrell fired a 9mm handgun, killing 23-year-old Martin and 22-year-old Colon. When Shemeeka Barros, 22, awoke from a nap on a couch, Burrell shot her as well. The gun used by Burrell was the same used in a separate incident in which DeBrito shot a romantic rival. DeBrito was sentenced to 50 years behind bars for that crime, but the sentence was reduced to 30 years and will run concurrently with the new sentence. Husband was sentenced in July 2014 to consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. Burrell was sentenced in December 2014 to 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. DeBrito was sentenced to 40 years to serve plus an additional 20 years suspended prison time.
The young man found guilty in a shocking triple murder case has his conviction thrown out. As we first reported on Eyewitness News at noon, today the Rhode Island Supreme Court vacated the conviction of 21-year-old Quandel husband. Husband was serving consecutive life sentences for murdering 2 men and a woman at a Providence housing complex in 2012 when he was just 16 years old.
In its ruling, the state Supreme Court found that the trial judge allowed evidence that should not have been admitted at trial. The Attorney General's office plans to retry the case. We'll have more details on this developing story in a live report on Eyewitness News at 6.
Conviction in Providence triple slaying is vacated. Providence. The state Supreme Court on Wednesday overturned the conviction of a 21-year-old Providence man serving 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 10 years, behind bars for his role in a triple slaying in July 2012, at the Arbor Glen housing complex. The High Court vacated Quandel husband's conviction, finding that Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause abused his discretion by allowing the jury to consider enormously prejudicial evidence that should not have been admitted at husband's 2014 trial. In doing so, the court sent the matter back to Superior Court for a new trial. The evidence at issue involved testimony by a man shot repeatedly by one of husband's alleged co-conspirators, Timothy Beeper DeBrito, with the same gun used in the triple shooting. DeBrito was convicted of shooting his romantic rival, Gary Ellerby, while Russell Burrell, yet another of husband's alleged co-conspirators, looked on, grinning. The High Court noted that there was no testimony about the Ellerby shooting that linked husband in any way as being present, let alone the shooter, while testimony established that Burrell and husband were good friends and shared possession of the handgun. The justices found that evidence of Ellerby's shooting was unduly prejudicial and certainly the type that would be likely to rouse the emotions of the jury. Ellerby is a father of 6 who was shot in the back 9 times. The fact that evidence was elicited at trial that defendant was seen in possession of the same firearm may have led the jurors to believe that he was somehow implicated in the Ellerby shooting. We also observed that the evidence of a seemingly senseless shooting in the same neighborhood in which the murders would soon take place could not help but cast a pall in the eyes of the jury with respect to the frequency of violence in the community. Chief Justice Paul A. Suttle wrote for the court. Amy Kemp, spokeswoman for the Attorney General's office, said the state is prepared to move forward and retry husband. Husband was 16 when authorities say he plotted with DeBrito, Burrell, and Donovan Hall to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money in a scheme that went sour when Burrell fatally shot the 3 victims. Husband, who was waived out of family court to be prosecuted as an adult, was the only one of the 4 people charged, 3 who were teenagers at the time of the killings, to go to trial. Though Burrell was the admitted trigger man who wielded the 9mm Glock with a red laser sight, a jury found husband equally responsible for the slayings of Shemeeka Barros, Michael Martin and Damien Cullen. 3 children were sleeping just doors away from the shooting. Krause sentenced Burrell to 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years in prison for being what a judge called a cold-blooded, pitiless slayer. Burrell, who has 2 children with husband's half-sister, refused to implicate husband in testimony at trial. DeBrito is serving 40 years in prison after admitting his role in the triple murder, plus another 50 years for shooting Ellerby with the same Glock. Hall, who testified it was his idea to rob Martin of marijuana and money, is serving life in prison after pleading guilty and agreeing to cooperate with the state in prosecuting husband. Jeff Bialchini and Richard Radcliffe represented husband before the Supreme Court. Lauren S. Surier argued for the state.
First at 6, we're learning more tonight about the stunning decision by Rhode Island's highest court to overturn the conviction in a triple murder case.
As we first broke at noon, the Supreme Court has ordered a new trial for a Quandel husband who was previously found guilty of killing 3 people in Providence in 2012 when he was just 16.
Eyewitness News reporter Jared Pleiner has been going through the court's decision and joins us live to tell us what he's found out. Jared?
Well, Mike and Shannon, of course, we reached out to the families of those murdered, and we ended up speaking briefly with the family of Damien Colon. They did not want to go on camera today. All they say is they want justice and they want peace. Providence's Quandel husband was just 16 when the state says he murdered Damien Colon, Shemeeka Barros, and Michael Martin in cold blood during a drug-motivated robbery at the Arbor Glen housing complex in 2012. A jury convicted husband. 3 other men pleaded guilty. Tonight, the Rhode Island Supreme Court saying husband deserves a new trial, ruling jurors shouldn't have been allowed to hear about another shooting as prosecutors tried to link husband to the gun. This testimony is highly likely to have had an unduly prejudicial impact on the jury. Moreover, the evidence may well have been confusing to the jury. It may have led the jurors to believe that he was somehow implicated in the Ellerby shooting.
My grandson is getting his second chance. and he was always innocent of this crime.
Catherine Husband says there were other problems at trial, and her grandson isn't the hardened thug prosecutors make him out to be.
The truth will all come to the light without all the lies.
We asked if she believes the other men convicted did what the state said they did.
They've gotten the right people, and Quandel was thrown into the mix of it all.
And Quandel Husband had been sentenced to consecutive multiple life terms. He is 21 years old now. The Attorney General's office telling us tonight it is prepared to retry this case. Live outside the Rhode Island Supreme Court tonight with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Jared.
Providence man gets 20 years in 2012 triple killing. Providence, RI. A Superior Court judge sentenced a 21-year-old city man to serve 20 years in prison after he admitted to his role in a botched robbery that led to the slaying of 3 people in July 2012. Quandel Husband, of Douglas Avenue, pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault with intent to commit robbery and 1 count of conspiracy to commit robbery for plotting with his childhood friend Russell Burrell and another friend, Donovan Hall, to rob a marijuana dealer of drugs and money July 30, 2012. During the robbery attempt, Burrell shot to death Damien, Shemeeka Barros, and Michael Martin at the Arbor Glen housing complex on General Street, while 3 children slept just rooms away. Husband, who had just turned 16 at the time of the murders, was indicted as an adult in the shooting deaths. A jury convicted him of all 3 murders after a trial in 2014. Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause sentenced him to serve 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 10 years, behind bars. The state Supreme Court in June, however, vacated Husband's conviction, finding that Krause abused his discretion by allowing the jury to consider enormously prejudicial evidence that should not have been admitted at trial. In doing so, the court sent the matter back to Superior Court for a new trial. In exchange for the plea earlier this month, the state amended the original charges against Husband. According to the Attorney General's office, the count of murder in Barros' death was revised to assault with intent to commit robbery on Barros, Martin and Cullen. The state agreed to dismiss murder and firearms counts for the deaths of Cullen and Martin. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit robbery, as originally charged. On the evening of July 30, 2012, Quandel Husband did not have the gun, did not fire the gun, and did not kill anyone. Russell Burrell did. After the robbery and murders, and in the furtherance of the conspiracy, Quandel Husband took the gun from Russell Burrell and hid it. Assistant Attorney General James Baum told Judge Nettie C. Vogel during the hearing on Husband's plea. According to a draft of Baum's statement provided by the state, he accepts responsibility for engaging in a conspiracy with Russell Burrell and hiding the firearm that was used by Russell Burrell. Husband's lawyer Thomas G. Briody said Friday. He continues to deny that he was present at the scene of the robbery. He is, however, remorseful for the loss of life. Briody said his client asked the victims' families for forgiveness during the December 20th hearing. I think he's done a lot of growing up in a very difficult environment, Briody said. Husband was the only one of the 4 people charged, 3 who were teenagers at the time of the killings, to go to trial. Burrell, now 22, the admitted trigger man who wielded the 9mm Glock with a red laser sight, pleaded guilty in the deaths of Martin, Cullen and Barros. Burrell gave very reluctant testimony at Husband's trial. Krause sentenced Burrell to 4 consecutive life sentences, plus 10 years, in prison for being what a judge called a cold-blooded, pitiless slayer. Burrell, who has 2 children with Husband's half-sister, refused to implicate Husband in testimony at trial. Timothy DeBrito, 31, of Providence, is serving 40 years in prison after admitting his role in the triple murder, plus another 50 years for shooting a romantic rival with the same Glock he provided to Burrell. Hall, now 23, who testified it was his idea to rob Martin of marijuana and money, is serving life in prison after pleading guilty and agreeing to cooperate with the state in prosecuting Husband. Husband will get credit for the time he served since his arrest. Briody said the deal reflected deal terms extended to Husband mid-trial in 2014.
Families of the defendants and victims of a 2012 triple homicide in Providence are hoping to put the events behind them. One of 4 co-defendants changed his plea in exchange for a new deal in court. Target 12 investigator Alexandra Leslie joins us now live in studio with the details. Alex?
Well, Donovan Hall's attorneys tell me today's hearing was a long time coming. Hall was facing 3 life sentences related to his role in a 2012 robbery turned triple homicide. Now his attorneys say this deal makes him eligible for parole. Donovan Hall's attorneys say the 30-year-old now has a new lease on life.
Maybe he turns a new leaf and he's able to take the second chance.
Hall was one of 4 men charged in a triple homicide in Providence in 2012. Hall and 3 other men, Russell Burrell, Timothy DeBrito, and Quandale Husband, were charged in the 2012 killings of Shemeeka Barros, Damien Cologne, and Michael Martin at an apartment on General Street. Prosecutors allege the men planned to break into the apartment with the intent of stealing money and drugs. Hall quickly left when the robbery turned deadly. In court Thursday, he apologized to the victims' families, saying, quote, "If I could turn back time and stop it all, I would. Unfortunately, I can't." Cologne's grandmother made a statement in court on Thursday saying she hopes Hall will take this second chance. His new case has been years in the making. In 2015, Hall was originally ordered to serve 3 life sentences. In 2022, a judge threw out his guilty plea. Last January, Hall pleaded not guilty, and on Thursday, the state and defense agreed on a new deal. His 3 murder charges were reduced to assault with intent to commit robbery.
Donovan's involvement, he's paying a serious price, but he also assisted in putting the shooter behind bars for the remainder of his life. So he did what was right, and today I believe the court did what was right as well.
Families of the victims declined to speak on camera. Hall's grandfather also did not want to speak on camera, but told me they felt justice had been served. Live in studio, I'm Alexandra Leslie, 12 News.
Superior Court judge says system failed defendant who was promised shorter prison term. Providence. A Superior Court judge has decided to cancel a plea of no contest that underpins a Providence man's life prison term for his involvement in a 2012 triple murder. Judge Susan E. McWhirl's decision, issued Tuesday, provides post-conviction relief to the 28-year-old inmate who helped prosecutors as they brought cases against 3 other defendants charged in the killings. The consequence of McWhirl's decision is that it gives Donovan Hall another chance to defend himself. McWhirl found that the system failed Hall when he pleaded no contest to 3 counts of first-degree murder before Judge Melanie Wilk Thunberg in 2014. Hall cooperated and pleaded no contest at the hearing because he was promised he would serve less prison time than any of the 3 other defendants, says McWhirl's decision. But Hall's lawyer did not tell Thunberg about the promise, says the decision. And one of the other defendants, Quandale Husband, ended up with a prison term totaling 30 years while another man, Timothy DeBrito, received a prison term of 40 years. Hall's testimony helped prosecutors secure a guilty verdict against the man who shot the 3 victims in a housing complex off Admiral Street near the North Providence boundary on July 30, 2012, says the decision. Russell Burrell's sentence included 6 consecutive life terms, to be served consecutively. Hall entered a plea of no contest only 6 days after his arrest in 2013. In 2015, Thunberg sentenced him to 3 life sentences to be served concurrently. The sentence did allow Hall a chance for parole. Also, it was within a range that prosecutors promised to recommend for him in exchange for his testimony against the other defendants. But McWhirl has decided the sentence did not honor another promise. Hall and his lawyer had been assured, orally, that he would receive less prison time than the other defendants. Hall would say that he was told by a member of the RI Attorney General's office that, "I would be getting the best deal of all those charged, and that this was the lowest that any sentence would go," said McWhirl's decision. One of Hall's lawyers, Robert McNellis, said Tuesday that the prosecutor was Assistant Attorney General James Baum. McNellis identified Hall's defense attorney as William Dimitri. "It is the opinion of this court that the state, through its prosecutor, should not make promises to a defendant in order to obtain cooperation and then not comply with that commitment," says McWhirl's decision. Brian Hodge, a spokesman for Attorney General Peter Naranja, said the office is reviewing the decision. Hall's other lawyer, Terry McInerney, said he is pleased by the ruling but more work needs to be done. McInerney said he saw Hall at the adult correctional institutions on Tuesday, and that he was quite emotional.